because when you look down the barrel of the lens, that is just mirroring the way you feel about yourself. What I think happens, similarly to when you're in the world of television and film, is that, we develop a filter. And similarly to an actor who, and let's just give you a different range of actor, let's just talk about a new actor, somebody that's new to acting. And let's just say somebody like on the complete upper end of the echelon, Daniel Day-Lewis. Let's just say one of my, obviously, unbelievable actor, one of my favorite actors. The delta between a new actor and somebody like him is there is no filter. Daniel Day-Lewis has no filter. When you're a new actor, you have a series of preconceived notions about how it should be, how it should look, how it should flow, how it should go. And those filters are what stifle the way in which you relate as a human to other humans. And I would just say it's the same thing with anybody who is watching this who has some fear about being on camera. It's very, very similar. We as humans and society has obviously influenced us in this regard, have a series of preconceived filters that we attain. Am I pretty? Am I handsome? Am I rich? Am I poor? Does my voice sound good? Does my voice sound bad? We develop all these filters. And that filter is literally the one point that completely changes the way that you relate to another human being. What we do at WowMe, it's not rocket science. We systematically, we moved away from shooting content now. We don't shoot content. One of our goals at the company was to be the world's largest production company that does not own a camera. So our goal was to always get out of production, but try and make it as systematic as possible for people to shoot. So really, when we work with somebody, and when we were working with somebody like yourself, we were just trying to figure out, how do you systematically create content? And the way that we did that is just literally going line by line. As you know, when you were recording the content, you just go line by line. But without getting too far in the weeds with all of that, even then, you have spectrums of individuals. You have spectrums of individuals like yourself. You could have somebody that's obviously, which I think you did a great job, but you could have other spectrums of individuals who are really nervous. And you're looking at them and you're like, how can you not say that line? Like, it's a very simple line. How are you not saying that? And what you realize after shooting 13,000 people, and just a disclaimer, I have not personally shot 13,000 people, but the company. What you start to realize is that there's a whole swath of insecurities and filters that everybody has. And that dictates how free they are when they perform. The other element that I think is really important is that people just don't do it enough. And, people get so hard on themselves, literally cursing at themselves in the studio. I've shot people like that, and I've been aware of people that are literally cursing at themselves in the studio. And then you think to yourself, well, how many times have you actually done this? How many times have you actually got up and started to do something which is very uncomfortable, which is speak lines to a stranger and then expect that you're going to be great at doing it? And regardless of whether you're an actor or not, it's just practice. You mentioned Michael Jordan at the beginning of this call. Michael Jordan's, I think it's 10,000 shot rule or 10,000 hour rule, whatever it is. Obviously, if you've that's absurd to have recorded 10,000 hours of video, obviously. But my point is that if you do it with enough repetition, you're going to get better at it. And likely those insecurities, those filters that you once had, they do start to diminish without question with practice. So for me, it's just, getting people, number one, comfortable with repetition, And then number two, and again, this could turn into a whole existential conversation. It's about how you feel about yourself. And society has just programmed us, especially with the invention of social media, to have an instant look as to who is doing what and how do I compare to those individuals. And so even today, when you think about recording camera, oh, my hairline's receded now, or I'm getting more gray in my beard, or I'm shining, or whatever it may be, or actually I'm getting kind of little bags under my eyes now at 42 years old. A lot of people can't look in the camera and say that. And the question is, why? So until we start unraveling ourselves as an individual and really start getting into the authenticity of ourselves as an individual, there is no way that you're going to be able to perform with authenticity, because when you look down the barrel of the lens, that is just mirroring the way you feel about yourself. Because the lens is just really just truth serum. And a lot of times, I have many stories, but we had a client, a big insurance company. I'm not going to say their name, but I think it's the largest insurance company in the country, and they have thousands and thousands of agents. Some of these agents, these financial advisors, they are significant earners, high six figures plus. When they walk into the room, they bring into the room an air of confidence based on their achievements. But what they've achieved outside of that room can instantly be diminished when they look into the lens. And the reason being is that just because you have a high paying job, just because you have a nice car, just because you live in a nice home, just because maybe you're handsome, that outward reflection doesn't mirror necessarily the way that you feel about yourselves. And we can all have that honest conversation with ourselves about, how do we really feel about me? When I used to interview people in the very beginning, we used to write these why stories, which was kind of like, why do you do what you do? And I would ask people a series of different questions as I was doing the interview. And one of the questions that would get people in some cases to cry, and I'm not even joking, men would cry, is asking, who is Daniel to Daniel? And people never ask themselves this question. This is to me the direct way to really access authenticity, is to truly know oneself and unapologetically display that. Well, when I was really involved in the acting world, I owned a couple of small acting studios, and I used to teach a class. And the way that I ended up teaching is, we would have all these different workshops where actors had the opportunity, excuse me, to meet casting directors and agents, and they would do what we call, which is put up a scene, right? They would literally act in front of these casting directors and agents. And so in the beginning, we just, we used to just let people, come in and do your scene. Well, what we realized is that some of them, they weren't particularly good. And it was affecting my reputation with the agents or the casting directors, because obviously, even though we were paying them to be there, we still wanted to present them with good opportunities so that they could obviously be exposed to good talent. So inadvertently, I started to work with the actors prior to them getting in front of the casting directors and the agents. And through that experience, it ended up working with thousands of actors on thousands of scenes. And so there was a lot of repetition for me to see some of the mistakes that people were making about the way they prepare. When we think about going on camera and we're doing this, it's a very unnatural thing. It's a very unnatural thing. Even to think about posing for a picture. You're a human. When do you ever freeze? When do you ever go, okay? It's weird. It's a weird thing. So the only time you do that is when the camera is 100% focused on you and you got to shoot. Now, if you're a model or you're an actor and you're used to doing it, bam, you can pull that pose, whatever it is. Why? Because you got repetition, you've gone through all the stages of smelling imaginary oranges and all those things. But as a normal human being, it's kind of weird to do that. So what we would have our actors do, first of all, and this is one of the main things, and I think a lot of people will relate to this, and even more so than ever today, there's so much nervous energy in our everyday life. There's news, there's cool things that are coming, there's business, there's family, there's any number of things that are anxiety provoking. What happens when we have anxiety is that there's an energy charge in the body. So the body does remember that. And if you are not trained in understanding how to disperse that energy, guess what? It's going to come up as nervous anxiety energy when you're going to shoot on camera. So one of the things that we would have our actors do is do a series of physical exercises so that they could disperse some of that energy and really just be clean. This is not anything new in the acting world. They're just a series of relaxation exercises. And essentially what you're doing is you're changing the energetic charge in the body so that it disperses the energy, and then you can really just be a vessel to actually go out and perform from a clear place. So, you could do like somatic exercises. You can do silly things like squeezing your face like this. You can do stretches. You can do breathing. There's 4, 7, 8 breathing. So to prepare for being on camera, if you are somebody that does get nervous or you're self-conscious, one of the very first things to do is to release that energy. And there are a number of different ways to do it. You could scream, you could do somatic, you could stretch, you could breathe. There are any number of things to prepare your body emotionally for what you're about to do. Now, in some extremes, let's just use the example of Daniel Day-Lewis. He has a particular type of style for preparing, a technique for his acting that's very physical, very, very physical. And so you've probably heard of this method acting. That is really embodying the energy of this character and walking around with it consistently. He's emotionally prepared, emotionally charged for that scene. For example, give me an example where you have you ever been in an argument with your wife? Okay. Have you ever been really grateful for your children? Have you ever felt really excited about closing a loan? Okay. So very different charges. Argument with the wife, feeling so grateful to be a father, and then feeling achieved as a business person. They all have different emotional levels, correct? So if you were going to perform a scene, having just argued with your wife, you would have an emotional charge in your body. If you were going to perform a scene where you were looking at your children as they fall asleep in the evening and feeling so grateful, you would have a different emotional charge. When you close that deal and you finally got that loan locked, there's a different emotional charge. As humans, obviously, we don't think like that. We just are in the world. We're acting. We're in the world. Okay? Well, we're not acting. We're being in the world. So the moment that you prepare to be on camera, it's important to make sure that we've shed that anxious energy and we can really prepare to be on camera. So that's the first thing, is just really emotionally preparing ourselves, being relaxed and performing. The other little tip, and I think this is a very good one for people who have anxiety about speaking. The simple tip here is be specific with who you're talking to. If you are discussing a credit building video, if you're discussing talking to a veteran, if you're discussing talking to a referral partner, try actually picking an actual veteran. right? I'm going to think of Jennifer Campbell. When I think of Jennifer Campbell, who's a veteran, I'm going to think about advising her on the fact that she can get a 0% down loan and go and finally get that first home that she's been looking for, right? When I think of reverse, I might think of, you know what? I'm going to think of Marlene Hanson. Okay, I'm going to think of her because I know she's neat. She hasn't particularly planned well for retirement, but she is house rich. She could probably pull that out. Let me go and say this script to her. So be specific with who you're talking to. Number one, prepare your body. Your body is an instrument. If you're tight in your jaw, if you've been, a lot of us have stressful lives, and we're parents and we're business people and we're husbands and wives, and prepare your body. Make sure that your vessel is prepared. There's a lot of anxiety, a lot of tension in the jaw. Make sure you've released that. Release your body. And then make sure that you understand what you're saying and who you're saying it to. And I think this could really alleviate a lot of beginning jitters or nerves. And more importantly, just going back to what you were saying in the beginning, start tapping into your authenticity. Because if you come to the table and you have a bunch of preconceived notions about the way that things are going, then likely it's going to stifle your authenticity versus, I didn't prepare for this meeting. I just came on to have a conversation with Tim. If I prepared for the conversation and I was looking at my notes and I was doing all these things, that wouldn't have been healthy. Well, not healthy. It probably wouldn't have been my most authentic self. My pleasure. Thank you for having me on today, Tim. And yeah, hopefully there were some tidbits to take away.